Mistress brags about millionaire husband's diamond ring pregnant wife, gets furious and files for divorce. Caroline Winston never thought she would become that woman, pregnant, heartbroken, and on the brink of divorce. Yet here she was, staring at scandalous photos on social media, her husband's mistress, Megan Hughes, proudly flaunting a diamond ring worth more than most people's homes. As Caroline's unborn child stirred in her belly, fury replaced the numb shock. Her husband, Richard Winston, a millionaire businessman, had dared to shower Megan with lavish gifts while neglecting his pregnant wife. Enough was enough. Determined to protect her future and her child's, Caroline set her sights on one goal: to walk away from Richard's deceit and reclaim her life. Caroline Winston used to love the morning sipping her tea, enjoying the sunlight streaming through the windows of her stately colonial home in Westchester County. She'd once believed she and Richard shared a life built on loyalty and common dreams, a family, thriving careers, the promise of a stable future. But recently, the sense of security she cherished had started to unravel. It began with late-night business dinners Richard claimed were critical, followed by a suspicious perfume lingering on his suit's fragrances Caroline didn't recognize. Then came unexplained charges on their credit card bills at upscale boutiques she'd never heard of. Though pregnant and often battling morning sickness, Caroline's instincts sharpened with worry. She was no fool. At 33, she'd been around the corporate block enough to recognize the red flags. Her mother, Regina Larkson, once told her, "If a man changes his routines without reason, be watchful." Caroline had tried to brush aside the warnings, telling herself that Richard was simply working extra hard to prepare for the baby's arrival. But the anxiety refused to fade. It crept into her mind at midnight, forcing her awake. One drizzly Wednesday, Caroline pushed aside her half-eaten breakfast. The baby kicked gently. She placed a hand on her belly and breathed through a wave of nausea. The ring on her finger, a modest diamond Richard had bought after his first big pay bump, suddenly felt heavy. She remembered how he'd promised a grand upgrade someday when they reached a certain level of financial success. She'd laughed, saying she didn't need extravagance. "All I want," she'd declared, "is a happy marriage and a loving family." Now that promise felt hollow. Later that morning, Caroline attended her monthly prenatal checkup with Dr. Marianne Rothman at the New Hope Women's Clinic. Everything seemed normal for a second trimester pregnancy. Still, Dr. Rothman commented on Caroline's elevated stress levels. "Try to relax," the doctor advised gently, pressing the ultrasound probe against Caroline's stomach. "Stress hormones can affect the baby's development." Caroline nodded, tears pricking her eyes. She realized she needed clarity one way or another. Once home, Caroline sank onto the living room sofa. Their cat, a smoky grey Persian named Jasper, hopped onto her lap. Stroking Jasper's fur, she mulled over the strange tension that had gripped her household for weeks. Richard came home late most nights, reeking of an unfamiliar scent, half-heartedly murmuring excuses. She suspected an affair, but had no concrete proof, only illusions of guilt that gnawed at her. But beneath the worry simmered anger. If Richard truly betrayed her, how dare he do it while she was expecting their child? It was a violation, not just of marital vows, but of everything Caroline believed family should be. A knock at the door startled her from her thoughts. Their housekeeper, Ava Santos, poked her head in. "Sorry to bother you, Mrs. Winston. A delivery arrived. Looks like flowers." Caroline's heart leapt with a glimmer of hope. Maybe Richard sent them as an apology or a romantic gesture. She hurried to the foyer, only to discover an elaborate bouquet of red roses. The card read, "You take my breath away always, monsieur." The initial clearly wasn't R for Richard. This was from someone else to someone else. Had there been a mix-up with deliveries? Confused, Caroline rechecked the address label. Mr. Richard Winston, Redwood Lane. It was correct. The card, however, was not addressed to Caroline. It was addressed to a Megan Hughes. She felt her stomach twist. Red roses from her own husband to another woman, or from some unknown admirer to the mistress? The details were muddled, but the message was clear. Megan was in the picture. Caroline stood in the foyer numb. Just then her phone buzzed. It was a text from Richard, working late. "Don't wait up." That was it. No explanation, no apology for the day's confusion. Fury and heartbreak collided in Caroline's chest. She clenched her fists around the bouquet. Something had to give. She would no longer bury her head in the sand, pretending her marriage was fine. Truth beckoned, however ugly it might be. That evening, Caroline paced the living room, replaying every odd scenario in her head. Over the past month, the anomalies had been stacking up. A new iPhone she discovered on Richard's nightstand that he claimed was a work phone, which he whisked away whenever she entered the room. Lingerie receipts she found in his car, lingerie that certainly wasn't her size. A hotel key card that suspiciously fell out of his pocket one morning. She had confronted him then, but he insisted it belonged to a colleague who needed help with a big conference event. She wanted to believe him, truly. She hadn't married Richard Winston with the intent of becoming a cynic. Years ago, they met at a charity function for the St. Jude Foundation, and he'd been so kind, so supportive. She could still recall him standing on stage, passionately speaking about raising funds for children with cancer, and how that instantly melted her heart. He exuded sincerity and ambition. Caroline, an events coordinator at the time, had fallen head over heels. Their relationship blossomed quickly. They got married amid family and friends cheering them on. She imagined a future brimming with success and children running around their suburban lawn. For a while, that dream felt real, but life had taken a turn. Richard's businesses flourished, and the money came pouring in. He was suddenly a high-powered investor in Manhattan's real estate circles, dining with moguls and traveling for deals. Initially, Caroline was thrilled his success meant more security for their growing family. Yet she saw how wealth changed Richard's priorities. He became restless, always aiming to escalate his status. He started hosting lavish parties, surrounding himself with socialites, eager to impress them with his luxurious lifestyle. One day, Caroline recalled, they had a fight about a yacht party. She was newly pregnant and felt seasick just thinking about it. "You promised to be there," he complained, ignoring her pleas that she couldn't handle waves and loud music. When she stood her ground, he stormed off and left her to fend for herself, making her question if his concern for her and the baby was genuine or simply for show. Now, with the rose bouquet fiasco, Caroline's doubts crystallized. She grew convinced Richard was having an affair. The question was how long it had been going on and whether he'd come clean if pressed. Summoning her courage, she dialed the private investigator recommended by her friend, Linda Freeman. Linda had once discovered her own husband's affair through a PI named Daniel Jenkins, who provided photographic and financial proof. Caroline had never envisioned hiring someone to spy on her spouse, but she felt she had no other choice. "Hello, this is Jenkins," answered a composed male voice. Caroline hesitated, her heart pounding. "Hi, my name is Caroline Winston. I was referred by Linda Freeman. I suspect my husband might be unfaithful, and I need confirmation." They set up a meeting at Jenkins's discreet office on Lexington Avenue. After the call, Caroline sank into the couch, a wave of apprehension washing over her. She felt guilty. Investigating her own husband was a betrayal of trust. But then again, if he was betraying her while she carried his child, did he truly deserve her devotion? Caroline's appointment with Daniel Jenkins came the next day. She traveled into Manhattan, a city that both invigorated and intimidated her with its skyscrapers and bustling energy. She had to pause mid-commute when her baby decided to deliver a few sharp kicks, gentle reminders that she couldn't remain in denial. This wasn't just her fight. She was fighting for her child's future too. Jenkins's office was on the 10th floor of a modest building. Inside, she found a neatly arranged space. A man in his late 40s with salt and pepper hair greeted her politely. "Mrs. Winston, come in." He offered her a seat in a small conference room. After exchanging niceties, Caroline explained everything: the suspicious phone, the unaccounted-for charges, and especially the roses addressed to Megan Hughes. Jenkins scribbled notes in a leather-bound notebook, occasionally adjusting his reading glasses. "I'll need your husband's schedule, details on his vehicles, known associates, and any social media handles," Jenkins said matter-of-factly. Caroline slid over a file containing Richard's general routine, recent bank statements, and phone records. "Whatever it takes," she said, trembling slightly. "I just need to know the truth." Jenkins nodded. "We'll begin surveillance immediately. If I find evidence of an affair, I can compile it into a report. Should you decide to proceed legally, this evidence may help." Caroline clenched her fists. "I'm not sure if I'll go that far, but I can't stay in the dark anymore." That night, she returned home to find Richard in a strangely chipper mood, his suit jacket tossed over a chair, tie loosened. He greeted her with a kiss on the cheek. "Hey, honey, how was your day?" His warmth felt forced, like an actor performing a role. Her pregnancy glow might have masked her turmoil, but she was boiling inside, especially when she noticed a fresh whiff of perfume clinging to his shirt. Caroline mustered a smile, though her pulse raced. "Tiring," she replied. "I'm not feeling too well." She prayed he wouldn't see through her facade. She doubted he suspected she'd hired a detective. He seemed too self-absorbed to imagine she'd fight back. Over dinner takeout from their favorite Thai place, Richard spoke animatedly about an upcoming business trip to Miami. He emphasized how crucial it was for sealing the biggest deal of his life. Caroline played along, but her mind churned with suspicion. Was Megan going with him? Were they planning a secret getaway? Her stomach twisted in knots. She could barely touch her food. 2 days later, Jenkins called. "Mrs. Winston, I have something for you. I'll email you a file tonight." Caroline's throat tightened. She waited with dread until she saw the email notification ping on her phone. Opening it, she found a series of photos. The first showed Richard at a fancy restaurant La Boheme downtown, smiling across the table at an attractive blonde woman. Caroline scrolled through more images, him placing a hand on the woman's lower back, them entering a hotel together, arms linked. The timestamp read exactly the date and hour he told Caroline he was in a business meeting. Her stomach lurched. She recognized the woman, not personally, but from online gossip circles that occasionally featured real estate bigwigs and their glamorous companions. Megan Hughes, a socialite rumored to have multiple wealthy boyfriends. Caroline gazed at the final photo. Megan's ring finger sported a large diamond, and Richard was gently kissing her hand in front of the hotel's entrance. Caroline's heart pounded with betrayal and fury. She might have suspected it, but seeing proof confirmed the nightmare. She sat there, tears slipping down her cheeks, whispering, "So it's true." Her mind fogged over, but her baby's gentle kick snapped her back to reality. She wasn't alone in this. She had to protect her child from the lies. She spent the next hour sobbing into a pillow, her world collapsing. Then a steely resolve took hold. She wouldn't let Richard's infidelity define her future. If Megan Hughes wanted to brag about her stolen diamond ring, she could, but Caroline wouldn't stand for it anymore. She would not be humiliated or cast aside. She deserved better, and so did her unborn child. A week slipped by in a blur of tears and consultations with Jenkins about how best to proceed if Caroline decided to divorce Richard. At times she felt dizzy from it all, the betrayal, the pregnancy, the swirling thoughts of what if I'd been more attentive, or could I have prevented this somehow? She vacillated between heartbreak and anger. Beneath it all lay a simmering determination not to let Richard or Megan trample her dignity. On a chilly Saturday morning, Caroline was browsing her phone when a message popped up from Linda Freeman. Caroline, you won't believe Megan's post on Instagram. I'm DMing you the link. Heart racing, Caroline opened it. There, in a curated flurry of glitz, Megan Hughes showcased a massive diamond ring on her left hand, captioned, "When your man knows how to spoil you, #diamonds area girl's best friend, #blessed." Caroline felt the blood drain from her face. The background was the lobby of the Regal, a 5-star hotel in the heart of Manhattan. She recognized the marble columns from Jenkins's photos. The ring was enormous, far larger than the ring on Caroline's own finger. Immediately, Caroline's phone started lighting up with messages from acquaintances and even distant relatives. "Isn't that Richard's rumored mistress? So sorry you have to see this. Are you okay? You need to leave him," and so on. Her hand trembled as she scrolled through comments on Megan's post, many from strangers congratulating her, others gossiping about which wealthy man had footed the bill. Some comments even speculated about Richard Winston, referencing rumored sightings. Megan never directly named him, but the subtext was clear to anyone in the know. The smugness radiated from every photo. Fury burned in Caroline's chest. Her cheeks flushed hot with embarrassment. How dare Megan flaunt this ill-gotten prize, especially when Caroline was pregnant with the man's child? The affair was vile enough, but to boast publicly about the diamond ring? It was a brazen attempt to dethrone Caroline as Richard's wife. She fought back tears, refusing to let Megan see her crumble. Later that night, she confronted Richard in their living room. He'd just returned from work, suspiciously smelling of champagne. Caroline stood, arms folded, phone in hand. "Care to explain this?" She thrust the screen toward him, showing Megan's Instagram post. Richard froze. His face paled. "Caroline, it's not she's exaggerating. I didn't buy her that ring," he stammered, though the guilt was obvious. "You expect me to believe that? Are you seriously going to stand there and lie?" She glared at him, adrenaline surging. "I have proof you've been seeing her. Stop denying it." He swallowed hard. I made a mistake," he began, stumbling over his words. "It just happened once, twice. I mean, it wasn't supposed to go this far." Caroline's voice trembled with rage. "You have a pregnant wife at home and you're giving diamonds to another woman? How far did you plan to take it, Richard?" He ran a hand through his hair, desperation in his eyes. "Caroline, the first messed up. But it doesn't have to end us. She's nobody, just a fling. I love you." His voice cracked. A bitter laugh escaped Caroline's lips. "Then why is she acting like she's engaged to you? Why are you so absent from our life? Why are you never here for doctor's appointments or to talk about the baby's future?" Richard tried to approach her, hands outstretched, but she stepped back. "Don't touch me," she hissed, tears slipping down her cheeks. "I can't believe you. I can't look at you. I'm done playing the good wife while you flaunt your cheating." He reached for her again, but she sidestepped him, voice trembling. "If you won't leave, then I will. But mark my words, you're going to regret what you've done, because you're not only losing me, you're losing this family we planned." She stormed into the bedroom, slammed the door, and locked it, chest heaving. Outside, she heard Richard's muffled pleas, but she covered her ears, refusing to let him manipulate her again. Inside her womb, the baby stirred, perhaps sensing Caroline's turmoil. She gently placed a hand over her belly, vowing she'd protect her child from this toxic environment. In the darkness, her tears ran hot. She was terrified and furious, but resolved. The mistress could keep her diamond ring. Caroline would keep her pride and build a new future without Richard Winston, no matter how painful that journey might be. Days passed in a haze of avoidance. Richard vacated the house early in the mornings and returned after midnight, presumably staying with Meghan or hiding in some luxury hotel. Caroline no longer cared enough to ask. Each day her resolve to leave solidified, fueled by fresh humiliations. Strangers sent her pitying messages online, whispering about how everyone knew Richard was carrying on with Meghan. She discovered that the ring's rumoured price tag was upwards of $150,000, a shocking sum he'd never even considered spending on his own wife. During one sleepless night, Caroline rummaged through financial records. To her horror, she realized that Richard had drained a sizable portion of their joint savings to buy the ring money that was supposed to help with hospital bills, the baby's nursery, and future college funds. This new betrayal felt like a dagger through her heart. She couldn't sit by while he squandered their child's security on a mistress's jewelry. Early one morning, Caroline made an appointment with a prominent divorce attorney named Natalie Pierce. Natalie came highly recommended by Linda Freeman, who had navigated a similarly messy situation. Walking into the sleek law firm on Fifth Avenue, Caroline's heart pounded. She couldn't believe it had come to this, but each step closer felt like reclaiming her agency. Natalie Pierce was a sharp, polished woman in her mid-30s. She wore a crisp navy suit and offered Caroline a compassionate smile. "I've reviewed the details you sent," Natalie began, gesturing for Caroline to sit. "You have ample grounds for a divorce, especially given the financial improprieties and infidelity. The main question is how to proceed to protect your best interests." Caroline took a shaky breath. "I want out, but I also want to ensure my baby and I are cared for. What can we do?" Natalie leaned forward. "We can file on grounds of adultery and dissipation of marital assets. Given his net worth, you should seek substantial alimony and child support. We'll also freeze certain assets to prevent him from moving funds offshore or hiding them." It felt surreal, discussing a divorce strategy like a business deal. Yet, Caroline knew it was necessary. "He'll fight back," she warned. "He's proud and manipulative." Natalie nodded. "That's typical. But we have strong evidence, your private investigator's photos, the bank transfers for that diamond ring. Judges don't look kindly on extravagantly funding a mistress while neglecting a pregnant spouse. I can't promise a smooth road, but your case is solid." Caroline's voice trembled with gratitude and fear. "Thank you. Let's do this." Before she left, Natalie handed her a stack of documents to sign. The formality of each signature made Caroline's stomach twist in knots. She was genuinely terrified of the emotional fallout that would come once Richard realized how serious she was about divorcing. But her child's future and her own well-being demanded immediate action. That night, she found the courage to tell him. He arrived home unexpectedly at 9, stumbling slightly likely from an expensive dinner or post-work drinks. The tension was thick as Caroline confronted him in the foyer, arms crossed. "I spoke to a lawyer," she said, voice trembling but determined. "I'm filing for divorce." Richard's face paled. "Caroline, wait, don't do anything rash." She lifted a brow. "You think this is rash? You've flaunted your affair in public, wasted our joint savings on an obscene ring, and left me to deal with this pregnancy alone. I'm done, Richard." His eyes flashed with anger, then softened as though he might attempt the contrite husband act. "What about the baby? We can't break up our family." Caroline's lips tightened. "You broke it. You chose Meghan over me, over your unborn child. I'll make sure you still have a chance to be in the baby's life. But as for us, we're finished." He lunged to grab her hands, but she pulled back, an instinctive wave of revulsion coursing through her. She'd shed too many tears, endured too many humiliations. There was no going back. His eyes narrowed. "You're making a huge mistake. Meghan is she's nothing," he argued, but the ring and the nightly escapades said otherwise. Caroline felt a sudden calmness in her rage. "If she's nothing, then you threw away everything for nothing," she said, turning her back on him, walking upstairs. She needed to rest, for the baby's sake and for the long legal road ahead. Behind her, she heard Richard curse, banging a fist on the wall in frustration, but she didn't look back. She silently prayed for strength. She was choosing to walk her own path, free of deception, even if it meant facing an uncertain future as a single mother. At least she would have her dignity, and that was the final straw. The next morning, Caroline woke early. Her eyes were swollen from crying, and the baby kept shifting in her womb, as if agitated by her stress. She gingerly rose from bed and headed downstairs, half expecting to find Richard passed out on the sofa. Instead, she discovered he had left at dawn. The house felt cold and empty, reminding her that she was effectively alone now. Still, a faint sense of relief accompanied the loneliness. She didn't have to face his excuses or manipulations for the moment. Feeling drained but resolute, Caroline checked her phone. Dozens of messages flooded in, some from concerned relatives, others from acquaintances who had caught wind of the drama. Her cousin, Gabriela Mendez, a sharp-witted journalist, had texted, "If you need me to run a story about that vile mistress, just say the word. I'll roast them." Caroline managed a small smile at the offer, though she wasn't sure a public scandal would help her mental health or her baby's well-being. She did, however, accept an invitation from Linda Freeman to meet for coffee. They chose a cozy cafe called The Brew and Bloom, a place with pastel decor and sweet pastries, exactly what Caroline needed for comfort. She arrived, noticing Linda waving from a corner table. Linda's expression radiated concern as Caroline approached. Once seated, Linda reached over and squeezed Caroline's hand. "How are you holding up, sweetie?" Caroline tried to smile, but her eyes grew moist. "I've been better," she admitted. "I filed for divorce, Linda. I never imagined this would be my life, especially not while pregnant. But I had no choice." Linda nodded sympathetically, her bright red hair framing her warm, empathetic gaze. "I'm proud of you. It's not easy, but it's brave. I've been there, remember, when Mark left me for that paralegal. I thought my world had ended. But trust me, life goes on, and you'll find a new purpose." Caroline's heart lifted slightly. She recalled how devastated Linda had been, yet she emerged stronger, eventually meeting someone who valued her deeply. "I just worry about raising this baby alone," Caroline confessed, stirring her herbal tea. "I envisioned a family, 2 parents in one home. Now, everything is shattered." Linda leaned forward. "Listen, a single-parent home filled with love and stability is better than a 2-parent home plagued by deceit and fighting. You'll give your child all the love and care needed. And you'll have help. I'm here. Your family's here. You're not alone." Emotions welled up, but Caroline nodded gratefully. They talked about the next steps in divorce proceedings, about how Caroline could gather emotional support. Linda even recommended a prenatal yoga class that had helped her friend manage stress during a high-tension pregnancy. As they finished their drinks, Caroline felt a surge of resolve. She was not powerless. She had allies, a supportive family, and enough resources to protect herself and the baby from Richard's worst. That resolve was tested later that afternoon when Caroline received an unexpected call from an unknown number. She picked up, only to hear a smug female voice. "Hello, Caroline. It's Megan Hughes." Caroline's stomach clenched. She gripped the phone, glancing around her living room as if Megan might pop out of a closet. "What do you want?" Caroline asked, her tone icy. "I'm calling to clarify some things," Megan said, voice dripping with artificial sweetness. "Richard told me you're divorcing him. I just wanted to make sure you understand that he and I are going to be together no matter what." Caroline bristled. It took every ounce of self-control not to unleash a torrent of insults. "It's none of my concern who he chooses, Megan. I filed for divorce because he's a cheating liar." "Congratulations on inheriting that problem." Megan laughed softly. "Oh, I'm not worried. He's signing over certain assets to me to ensure I'm comfortable. But you're pregnant and left in the dust. That can't feel good." A wave of righteous anger coursed through Caroline. "You're deluded if you think I'll be the one left empty-handed. My lawyer is already on it, and trust me, the court won't look kindly on a man who abandons his pregnant wife to splurge on a mistress." Silence hummed over the line. When Megan spoke again, the saccharine tone was gone. "Richard owes me, Caroline. If you push too hard for his money, you'll make an enemy of me. And I can be very persuasive, especially with the media." Caroline's heart pounded. She took a deep breath. "You're threatening me because you want to protect your ill-gotten finances? Good luck. I'm not scared of you. The truth is on my side, and I have the receipts to prove it." Megan hissed, "Fine. Do what you must. Just remember, I won't let you or anyone else ruin what Richard and I have." She hung up, leaving Caroline's ears ringing with the menacing vow. Caroline stood frozen, phone in hand, a swirl of fury and defiance fueling her. She whispered to herself, "She's underestimating me." If Megan Hughes thought she could bully a pregnant woman into submission, she was in for a rude awakening. Caroline had endured enough heartbreak. Now, she would show them both that she wasn't someone to be trifled with. The day of the preliminary divorce hearing dawned under a grey sky, spitting cold rain. Caroline braced herself for the event, dressing in a simple black maternity dress that flattered her growing belly. Anxiety fluttered through her stomach. This was her first time stepping into a courtroom for something so personal. But she reminded herself that this step was crucial for reclaiming her life and securing her child's future. Natalie Pierce met her at the courthouse entrance, providing a steady presence. "We have enough evidence to push for a favorable settlement, so don't worry," she assured Caroline. "Stay calm, answer honestly if addressed, and let me handle the rest." Caroline nodded, swallowing her nerves. As they walked into the corridor, she spotted Richard flanked by his lawyer, a tall, stern-faced man named Gerald Stark. She also noticed Megan Hughes lurking a few steps behind, draped in an ostentatious fur coat despite the mild weather. When their eyes met, Megan gave her a smug half-smile, wiggling her diamond-ringed fingers. Caroline turned away, refusing to play into the mistress's taunts. In the small hearing room, both parties sat at opposing tables. The judge, an older woman with sharp eyes, called the session to order. Natalie presented a concise summary of Caroline's complaints: infidelity, dissipation of marital assets, emotional distress, and the need for child support. She also argued that Caroline should retain the marital home, as it provided stability for the impending baby. Gerald Stark rebutted by downplaying Richard's affair, labeling it a personal indiscretion that bore little relevance to the financial aspects. He claimed that the diamond ring purchase was Richard's personal expenditure, separate from marital funds. He insisted that Caroline's demands for alimony and child support were exorbitant, given that she came from an upper-middle-class background and had potential earning power as an event planner. Caroline's anger flared, but she kept her composure, remembering Natalie's advice. When she was called to speak, she explained, voice trembling, that she had left full-time work at Richard's request to focus on the pregnancy. She had done so assuming they were a team, only to discover he was funneling money into grandiose gifts for a mistress. She reiterated her concerns about the baby's well-being. "I will not allow my child's financial security to be jeopardized by my husband's extravagant spending on another woman," she concluded, her eyes bright with unshed tears. Richard was called to speak next. He looked uncharacteristically haggard, dark circles under his eyes. "I made mistakes," he admitted, shifting uncomfortably, "but I still love my wife. I'd like to work things out." His contrite tone grated on Caroline. Just days ago, he'd been partying with Megan. Now, he was claiming regret. She suspected it was a ploy to reduce the divorce settlement. He then argued that the ring's payment came from his personal investment gains. "It wasn't from our joint account," he insisted. "I have the statements to prove it." But Natalie was quick to highlight large, unexplained withdrawals that preceded the ring's purchase. The judge listened intently, occasionally glancing at the documents each lawyer submitted. When the hearing concluded, the judge set another date for further proceedings, instructing both sides to gather more evidence of asset distribution. In the interim, the judge ruled that Richard must continue paying the mortgage on the marital home, as Caroline needed stability for her pregnancy. She also set a temporary support order so Caroline could manage living expenses. Richard's financial obligations started that very week. Outside the courtroom, Megan wasted no time. She sauntered up to Caroline, flipping her glossy hair. "How does it feel to cling to him like this? Accepting his money after you tossed him out?" Caroline blinked, momentarily stunned. "I'm not clinging. The court recognized that a pregnant woman deserves financial support from the man who helped create this baby. It's called responsibility." She turned to walk away, but Megan grabbed her arm. "Let go of me," Caroline hissed, yanking free. Some passers-by turned to watch the commotion. Megan's voice turned venomous. "Richard is mine now. The only reason he's playing the remorseful husband card is to save face in court. Once this is over, he'll be free and you'll be left with your pity money." Caroline's blood boiled. But before she could respond, Linda Freeman appeared from behind, stepping between them. "If I were you," Linda told Megan icily, "I'd worry less about harassing a pregnant woman and more about how quickly your sugar daddy might dump you if the law clamps down on his finances." Megan scowled, eyes darting to Richard, who stood by the exit, pinned under Gerald Stark's stern talk. She stomped away without another word. Caroline felt her heart pounding, tears close to the surface, but she steadied herself, grateful for Linda's timely intervention. "Thank you," she breathed. Linda patted her shoulder. "That woman has some nerve. Don't let her get to you. You're doing what's right for you and the baby." Caroline exhaled, nodding. The first legal skirmish was over, but the war was far from finished. Still, she felt a rush of empowerment. The judge's acknowledgement of her rights, Linda's unwavering friendship, and the baby's resolute kicks in her belly reminded her that she was no victim. She was fighting for her future, and she was determined to win. In the days following the preliminary hearing, tension escalated in the Winston household. Richard, still technically co-owner of their home, made surprise visits to gather belongings. Each time, the encounters with Caroline erupted in arguments. Sometimes he insisted he'd changed and wanted her back. Other times, he accused her of greed and spite. His mercurial behavior left Caroline on edge. One Saturday morning, as Caroline was sorting baby clothes in the nursery, she heard the front door bang open. Richard's voice echoed down the hall. She tensed he hadn't given any notice of coming by. Bracing herself, she walked into the living room to find him rummaging through drawers. "What are you doing?" she demanded, arms crossed over her pregnant belly. He glanced up, face flushed. "I'm looking for some paperwork. I have every right to be here." Caroline's pulse quickened, but she willed herself to remain calm. "I told you to text or call before coming. This stress isn't good for me or the baby." Richard sneered. "Since when do you care about my stress? You're the one who's milking the courts for every dollar." She bristled. "I'm not milking anything. I'm fighting for what's fair for our child. If you don't want to support me, at least support your baby." he scoffed, slamming a drawer shut. That child is mine too. Once it's born, I'll do my part. But I'm not going to let you bankrupt me. Caroline's voice trembled with rage. If you're so worried about finances, maybe you shouldn't have dropped a fortune on Megan's ring. His expression darkened at the mention of Megan. She's different. She appreciates me. He paused, running a frustrated hand through his hair. But I never wanted it to go this far. I never wanted to lose you. A bitter laugh escaped her. Then you shouldn't have cheated. She motioned toward the door. Just go, Richard. He hesitated, glancing around the living room where they once cuddled to watch movies, celebrating birthdays and anniversaries. A flicker of regret crossed his features. For a fleeting moment, Caroline felt an ache for the man she once loved, the man who might have been a good father. But that man had become a stranger. Richard sighed. You know, this is all your fault, too. You became so focused on the baby you forgot about me. The words cut deep, and Caroline felt a wave of nausea, part pregnancy-related, part emotional shock. She steadied herself against the couch. I'm pregnant with your child, she retorted, voice shaky. If you can't handle your wife focusing on a baby, that says more about you than me. Without waiting for his reply, she turned and walked away, retreating to the nursery. Behind her, she heard him curse, rummage a bit more, then storm out. When the front door slammed, she allowed herself to weep. It wasn't just heartbreak, it was the betrayal, the blame shifting, the cruel notion that she was somehow at fault for devoting attention to a baby they both agreed to have. She sank into the rocking chair, tears dripping onto the soft pink blanket she'd folded for her daughter. She'd recently learned the baby was a girl during an ultrasound. She whispered, I'm sorry you have to feel all this, but I promise I'll keep you safe. Gently stroking her belly, she closed her eyes and forced her breathing to slow. The house felt emptier than ever. In that moment, she resolved to accelerate the divorce proceedings if possible. She couldn't keep confronting him in this toxic cycle of blame. The child deserved a peaceful environment, and every day that passed with Richard's looming presence threatened that peace. Word spread quickly that the divorce between Richard and Caroline Winston was turning ugly. Gossip columns relished the story, the pregnant wife scorned, the mistress who boasted a diamond ring. Even tabloids like the New York Daily Star published headlines, Millionaire mogul's affair sparks nasty divorce. Pregnant wife takes him to court. For Caroline, the exposure felt invasive. She only left the house for doctor's appointments, legal meetings, and occasionally to see supportive friends like Linda. When she did, curious onlookers or reporters tried to snap photos. She wore oversized sunglasses and scarves to conceal her identity, but the stress mounted. One afternoon, she received a call from her cousin Gabriella, who sounded breathless. Caroline, check the gossip sites. Megan Hughes is publicly airing her grievances against you. She gave some interview full of lies. Heart pounding, Caroline opened her laptop. Sure enough, on an entertainment website, she found an article titled, Megan Hughes Speaks Her Truth. The Wife Bullied Me from Day One. In it, Megan painted herself as a misunderstood lover who fell in love with Richard after his wife neglected him. She claimed Caroline threatened and harassed her, forced Richard to buy gifts out of fear. She'd smear his reputation. Megan even hinted that Caroline's pregnancy was planned to trap Richard, a statement so vile that Caroline almost threw her laptop in rage. She called Linda, voice shaking. Can you believe the nerve of this woman? She's lying to the press, acting like she's the victim. Linda tried to reassure her. It's a tactic, Caroline. She's trying to sway public opinion, maybe hoping it helps Richard's side in court. Don't stoop to her level. Keep building a strong legal case. Later that day, Caroline met with Natalie Pierce to discuss the recent developments. Natalie sighed upon hearing Meghan's claims. We can't control the media, but we can control the narrative in court. I advise you not to respond publicly. Let Meghan rant. The real battle is in the judge's chamber. Caroline nodded wearily. It's just exhausting to see her tarnish my name. I'm pregnant. I don't need this stress. Natalie gave her a sympathetic look. I understand. Let's shift focus to finalizing the financial records. We've subpoenaed the jewelry store for the receipt of that diamond ring. If it shows a debit from any joint account, that's a significant point in our favor. They compiled more documents, highlighting suspicious transfers from Richard's business accounts to personal accounts, hinting that he might be hiding money. Meanwhile, Jenkins, the private investigator, uncovered that Meghan had a history of latching onto wealthy men and leaving once their funds dried up. He provided statements from previous boyfriends, describing how Meghan manipulated them into buying expensive gifts before abruptly vanishing. Armed with this intel, Caroline felt renewed determination. If Meghan planned to drag her name through the mud, Caroline would respond by unveiling the mistress's manipulative track record in court. Caroline herself intended to remain above the public fray, refusing to give tabloids an inflammatory quote. Despite the chaos, Caroline found solace in small joys, folding tiny onesies, picking out pastel colors for the nursery walls, even sharing baby name ideas with Linda. She refused to let Meghan's vendetta overshadow the excitement of welcoming a new life. Yes, this pregnancy was marred by heartbreak and stress, but it was also a beacon of hope for Caroline, a reminder that love and innocence still existed. She did worry about how the negative press might affect her daughter in the future. Children sometimes learn of their parents' conflicts. But Caroline resolved that one day she'd explain, gently, why she had to stand up for herself and her child. She'd emphasize that no one should remain in a marriage built on betrayal and manipulation. The next court date loomed, promising more conflict. Still, Caroline clung to the belief that truth would prevail. Meghan Hughes could flaunt her diamond ring and spin her sob story, but the legal system wouldn't be swayed by gossip columns. For the sake of the baby, Caroline was determined to see justice served no matter how loudly the mistress fought back. The second major court date arrived on a crisp morning. Caroline wore a tailored navy maternity dress that felt empowering. She was nearly 7 months pregnant now, her belly unmistakable. The baby was active, reminding her at every turn that she had a precious life, depending on her strength. Natalie Pierce walked by her side as they entered the courthouse. Just before stepping into the courtroom, Caroline caught sight of Richard and Meghan. The mistress had the audacity to show up again, this time wearing a tight designer dress and flaunting the enormous diamond ring. Caroline's stomach churned, but she lifted her chin, refusing to cower. Once seated, the judge wasted no time. We're here to address the financial disclosures, marital asset division, and the legitimacy of certain expenditures in light of Miss S. Winston's pregnancy and Mr. Winston's admitted infidelity. Natalie presented evidence from the jewelry store subpoena. It conclusively showed that $75,000 came from the Winstons' joint account funds, originally earmarked for the baby's expenses. Although the ring had cost more, the store's records were enough to prove that part of the purchase used marital resources. Caroline's fury flared anew, imagining how many baby essentials that $75,000 could have covered. Gerald Stark tried to deflect, arguing that Richard had replenished the account with his personal investments. But Natalie countered that the deposit Richard made arrived after Caroline filed for divorce, possibly an attempt to mask the wrongdoing. The judge frowned, demanding more clarity from Richard. As Richard fumbled through explanations, Meghan, seated behind the defense table, kept tossing haughty looks at Caroline. Several times, the judge had to request decorum. The tension crackled in the air. Caroline's turn came to speak about the stress she endured. She described how, at a crucial time in her pregnancy, she had to navigate discovering her husband's affair, Meghan's public taunts, and financial insecurity. She explained how the diverted funds threatened her prenatal care. Her voice caught as she recounted the emotional pain, but she pressed on, determined to show the court that she wasn't overreaching, she merely wanted justice for her unborn child and herself. Finally, the judge addressed Richard. "Mr. Winston, the evidence suggests you used joint funds for a personal affair. You also left your pregnant wife with limited support while you maintained a second relationship. This court must consider the unborn child's interests as paramount. I'm inclined to grant Miss S. Winston a significant portion of the marital assets to ensure the child's welfare." Gerald Stark interjected, trying to lessen the blow, but the judge was firm. She scheduled a final hearing to finalize the property division and child support arrangements, stating, "Unless there's a stark turnaround in evidence, I see no reason to alter this course." Caroline's spirits soared. Meghan, on the other hand, looked like she'd swallowed a lemon. She shot daggers at Caroline, no doubt seething that her gravy train might be curtailed. Richard sank in his chair, shoulders slumped, as reality began to settle upon him. Outside the courtroom, the press waited. Natalie whisked Caroline past them with a quick, no comment. But a few reporters shouted questions, peppering them with rumors about Meghan's meltdown inside. Caroline glimpsed Richard and Meghan behind them, locked in what appeared to be a heated argument. She overheard Meghan hiss, "I won't be left with nothing," before the crowd closed in around them. By the time Caroline and Natalie reached the street, her heart was pounding. "We're in a good position," Natalie said, gently guiding her away from the media scrum. "Stay strong. The next hearing should seal the settlement." Caroline exhaled shakily, pressing a hand to her belly. The baby kicked, as if cheering her on. She allowed herself a small smile. For all the heartbreak, the legal battles, and public humiliation, she was on the cusp of securing a stable future for herself and her daughter. Caroline found herself 8 months pregnant, exhausted from the endless legal wrangling and media scrutiny that had plagued her for weeks. The second major hearing had ended with the judge warning her estranged husband, Richard, that misusing joint funds for a mistress would not go unpunished. Now, as she waited for the final court date, she felt both anxious and oddly relieved that an end was in sight. Her divorce attorney, Natalie Pierce, kept her informed about every development, from Richard's attempts to shift money around to the documents needed to finalize the settlement. Caroline tried to focus on her impending motherhood, but she battled late-night doubts. Each time the baby shifted or kicked, a wave of protectiveness surged in her. This child deserved stability, something her current circumstances lacked. She had little appetite for the tabloids' daily rants about the pregnant wife scorned and the diamond-flaunting mistress. She simply wanted to leave the betrayal behind. Her friend Linda Freeman often dropped by with groceries or prepared meals, determined to ease the burden. One afternoon, Linda arrived cradling a small box wrapped in pastel ribbon. Inside was a handmade baby blanket, embroidered with the name Caroline had chosen weeks earlier, Sophie Winston. Caroline felt tears burn her eyes. Seeing her daughter's name in delicate pink thread transformed the swirl of anxieties into renewed hope, Linda told her. A single-parent home can be a sanctuary if it's filled with love and honesty. Caroline clung to those words, reminding herself that her strength would guide Sophie into a bright future. Meanwhile, rumors flew that Richard was under severe financial strain, caught between legal obligations and a mistress demanding more gifts to maintain her lavish lifestyle. Caroline learned from their private investigator that Meghan Hughes might have threatened to expose even more about Richard's personal dealings if he failed to keep her satisfied. Though Caroline's sympathies had run dry, she found a grim satisfaction in knowing that Richard's choices were catching up to him. Then came the day before the final hearing, when Caroline agreed to meet Richard in a public cafe. He looked disheveled, tie askew, eyes hollow. Over a half-finished cup of coffee, he claimed he was ending things with Megan. "She's toxic," he said, voice trembling. "We've been tearing each other apart." When he suggested they might reconcile, Caroline felt a flash of the old pain. She shook her head. "There's no going back. We can try to co-parent, but I can't trust you again." He stared at her pregnant belly, tears flickering in his eyes, then quietly nodded. The following morning, Caroline headed to the courthouse under a crisp April sky. She wore a loose-fitting dress that accommodated her bump. Every step reminded her how close she was to meeting Sophie. Linda and Natalie supported her as they passed through the media throng, ignoring intrusive questions. Inside, she found Richard slumped at the defense table, looking resigned. This time, Megan was conspicuously absent. Once proceedings began, Natalie methodically presented the evidence. Bank statements showing Richard's extravagant spending, testimony confirming he'd left Caroline without adequate financial security, and clear proof he'd used shared funds for Megan's diamond ring. Gerald Stark, Richard's lawyer, tried to mitigate the damage, but the judge was unmoved. She declared Caroline entitled to retain the house and a sizable lump sum payment for the stress and hardships endured during pregnancy. Monthly child support would commence the moment Sophie was born. The judge further affirmed joint legal custody, but physical custody would remain primarily with Caroline, ensuring stability for mother and child. A stunned silence followed. Richard looked toward Caroline, and for a brief moment she saw genuine remorse etched in his face. She managed a small nod. There was no victory in the destruction of their marriage, only the closure she needed to protect herself and Sophie. Exiting the courthouse, Caroline felt an overwhelming sense of relief. The process had been grueling, but now she could finally breathe. "I'm proud of you," Linda whispered, as they ducked into a taxi, leaving Richard behind with his regrets and the media's endless curiosity. In that quiet cab ride home, Caroline placed a hand over her belly, promising Sophie a peaceful life, untainted by betrayal and self-doubt. A few weeks later, Caroline went into labor late one night. Linda rushed her to the hospital, where she endured hours of contractions before finally meeting her daughter's gaze. In that instant, Sophie blinking up at her under the bright maternity ward lights, Caroline felt a love so fierce it eclipsed the heartbreak she'd endured. When Richard arrived the next day, looking awkward and unsure, Caroline allowed him a brief visit. She reminded him that if he wanted a role in Sophie's life, he'd need to be responsible, honest, and consistent. Returning home with her newborn, Caroline settled into a new routine. The nursery's pastel colors and the gentle hush of lullabies offered a stark contrast to the turmoil she'd faced. She rocked Sophie in her arms, breathing in the baby's sweet scent, and realized that this was her true new beginning, a chance to create a home grounded in love, stability, and respect. Whatever storms had raged around her, they now felt distant. The diamond ring, the media frenzy, Megan's flaunting they had lost their power to wound her. In their place stood Caroline's unwavering resolve to give Sophie a life brimming with hope, honesty, and a mother's unfaltering devotion. Thank you for joining us on this roller coaster of secrets, betrayal, and hard-won freedom. Caroline's journey shows how life can shatter our expectations in the most painful ways, yet also how the fierce love for an unborn child and the support of trusted allies can pave a way forward. When faced with a mistress flaunting a diamond ring and a once loving husband turned distant, Caroline chose courage. She filed for divorce to protect her future and her baby's well-being, proving that no shiny trinket compares to self-respect and the promise of a peaceful home. If this dramatic tale resonated with you, please tap that like button to show your support. Share it with friends who enjoy stories of resilience and redemption. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more real-life drama fiction that inspires and empowers. Your engagement helps us bring you more captivating stories. Thank you for watching.